Nadab and Abihu were the oldest sons of Aaron. Along with Aaron and their two younger brothers, they were ordained as the first priests for the children of Israel. But the first time Nadab and Abihu were participating in the service, they were consumed by the fire of God. This was not just any service. It was the first service after Moses erected the tabernacle. It was the service during which God Himself came down and lit the fire on the altar. The service should have been one of undiminished joy and excitement. The children of Israel had labored for nearly 7 months to build the tabernacle, the altar of sacrifice, the golden candelabra, and the altar of incense, and the table of showbread, and all the other furnishings of the tabernacle. What went wrong? Why did it necessitate the death of Nadab and Abihu, two of the priests ordained to the service of God? I'm Dan Cathcart, and this is Shadows of the Messiah. To see what went wrong on this day, we need to look at the events that led up to it. The construction of all the parts of the tabernacle had been completed just 8 days earlier. Moses began the process of ordination of Aaron and his sons by bringing them to the door of the tabernacle. Exodus 29, verse 4. And Aaron and his sons thou shalt bring unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and thou shalt wash them with water. The ordination ceremony took 7 days and involved sacrifices on each day. The purpose of this week-long ceremony was to set Aaron and his sons apart to the service of God. Look at Exodus 29, 35-37. Thus shall you do to Aaron and his sons according to all that I have commanded you. 7 days you shall consecrate them, and you shall offer a bull every day as a sin offering for atonement. You shall cleanse the altar when you make atonement for it, and you shall anoint it to sanctify it. 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar and sanctify it, and the altar shall be most holy. Whatever touches the altar must be holy. Now wait a minute. The dedication ceremony for the tabernacle was not until after Aaron and his sons were sanctified and could conduct the service. So how did Moses bring them before the door of the tabernacle? And where did Moses bring the offerings for their dedication? The Jewish sages say that each day of the ordination, Moses set up the tabernacle, performed the service, and then took it all down again. At the same time that Aaron and his sons were being consecrated, the altar of God was also itself being sanctified. The altar became most holy, and whatever touched the altar was to be holy. The altar in that this passage talks about is specifically the altar of sacrifice, frequently called the brazen altar. The rest of the tabernacle and its implements would be sanctified or made holy during the dedication of the tabernacle, which includes the official setting up of the tabernacle described in Exodus 40, 1-2. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, On the first day of the first month you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. The chapter goes on to describe in detail each step that God commanded Moses to do and how Moses accomplished the command. Exodus 40, verse 19. And he spread abroad the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering of the tent above it, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 21. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the veil of the covering and covered the ark of the testimony, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 23. And he set the bread in order upon it before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Verse 25. And he lighted the lamps before the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 27. And he burnt sweet incense thereon, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 29. And he put the altar of burnt offerings by the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and offered upon it burnt offerings and meat offerings, as the Lord commanded Moses. Moses was careful to do everything exactly how God told him to do it. He did not vary God's instructions in the least little detail. Now, one of the last steps in setting up the tabernacle was setting up the laver for Aaron and his sons to wash before coming near to God. Look at Exodus 40, verses 30 through 32. He set up the laver between the tabernacle of the meeting and the altar, and he put water there for washing. And Moses, Aaron, and his sons would wash their hands and their feet with the water from it whenever they went into the tabernacle of meeting, and when they came near the altar, they washed as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now, not only was it important for Moses to follow God's instructions exactly, Aaron and his sons were to do the same. Leviticus describes the 7-day ordination ceremony, including that everything was done according to God's instructions. Look at Leviticus 8, 33 through 36. And you shall not go outside the door of the tabernacle of meeting for 7 days, until the days of your consecration are ended. For 7 days he shall consecrate you, as he has done this day, so the Lord has commanded to do, to make atonement for you. Therefore you shall stay at the door of the tabernacle of meeting day and night for 7 days, and keep the charge of the Lord, so that you may not die. For so I have been commanded. So Aaron and his sons did all the things that the Lord had commanded by the hand of Moses. So Moses set up the tabernacle on the first day of the month of Nisan, the month that God said would be the beginning of months. The consecration of Aaron and his sons was complete. All was done as the Lord commanded Moses. Now it was time to start their service to God. Everything went great. Aaron, assisted by his sons, brought all the offerings. Then he and Moses went together into the tabernacle, and they came out. They blessed the people. Then God made his presence known. Look at Leviticus 9, 23 through 24. And Moses and Aaron went into the tabernacle of meeting, and came out and blessed the people. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people, and the fire came out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. When all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. So the cloud of God's presence that had hovered over them since leaving Egypt now entered the tabernacle. Exodus 40, 34 through 35. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting, because the cloud rested above it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Now the sages teach that the fire went into the Holy of Holies, then out to the golden altar of incense, and from there to the brazen altar of the sacrifice. And the people shouted and fell on their faces, praising God. Then the unthinkable happened. In the midst of this glorious ceremony, Nadab and Abihu took it upon themselves to deviate from what God had commanded and changed the ceremony. Look at Leviticus 10, verse 1. Then Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire on it, put incense on it, and offered profane fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. So all along, we have read over and over that all was done as the Lord commanded Moses, starting in Exodus 39 with the making of the parts of the tabernacle. The phrase, "as the Lord commanded Moses," appears 24 times. So now I think it's important that everything be done according to God's instructions. But now we read that Nadab and Abihu did what they thought needed to be done. They did something that the Lord had not commanded, and the results were catastrophic. Look at Leviticus 10, verse 2. So fire went out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. So there are various explanations for what exactly Nadab and Abihu did, but what is most important is that they went off on their own, not following God's commands. All of the steps involved in the consecration of the tabernacle and of Aaron and his sons were for the purpose of making them holy to the Lord. The word holy comes from the Hebrew root word kadash, Numbers 69:42, meaning to be made ceremonially clean. The word kadash is most often translated, though, as sanctified or holy. In English, the word sanctify means to be set apart, and the word holy means to be set apart by or for God. Now, God was setting apart the tabernacle for His presence and the priesthood for His service. This distinction is so crucial that the Bible records repeatedly that all was to be done and was done according to all that the Lord commanded. Now, God's words to Aaron through Moses after the death of Nadab and Abihu were that God must be regarded as holy. Look at Leviticus 10, verse 3. And Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke, saying, By those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people, I must be glorified." So Aaron held his peace. Nadab and Abihu came near to God and did not regard him as holy. God said that He had already spoken about this requirement. When God called Moses to approach Him on the Mount Sinai, He commanded any priests that accompanied Moses to consecrate themselves. Look at Exodus 19, verse 22. Also, let the priests who come near the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. The Hebrew word for the phrase come near in this passage in Exodus is nagash, meaning to come near or to cause to come near. But the Hebrew word for the same phrase come near in Leviticus 10:3 is korban. It is the same basic meaning to come near or to approach as in nagash. However, a variation of this word karab is used to describe the purpose of all the offerings to the extent that the word offering is used in place of come near. Now we see this in the opening verses of the book of Leviticus. After the glory of God entered the tabernacle, as we read in Exodus 40:35, no one, not even Moses, could approach the tabernacle. So God called to Moses from out of the tabernacle, telling him how a person could draw near to God. Look at Leviticus 1, verses 1 and 2. Now the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle of meeting, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock of the herd and of the flock." The Young's literal translation of the Bible renders verse 2 as such: "Speak unto the sons of Israel, and thou hast said unto them, Any man of you, when he doth bring near an offering to Jehovah, out of the cattle, out of the herd, or out of the flock, ye do bring near your offering." The word bring near is karab, and the word offering is the Hebrew word korban, Numbers 71:33, from the root karab, meaning that which is brought near, in the context that which is brought near to the altar. Now Nadab and Abihu drew near without bringing the proper offerings. They attempted that which Moses did not attempt. God completed His explanation to Moses by saying that He would be glorified by all the people. Again, we see that God has already explained this. He told Moses that the purpose for the tabernacle was that he would meet with the children of Israel there, and the tabernacle would be sanctified, would be set apart by the presence of God's glory. Nadab and Abihu didn't regard the sanctity of God's glory. When they came near in their own way, they violated the sanctity of the tabernacle and dishonored the glory of God. They fail to realize that coming into God's presence was like coming into an all-consuming fire. Moses warned the people about the danger of treating God and His covenant lightly before they entered the Promised Land some 40 years later. We find that in Deuteronomy 4:23 and 24. Take heed to yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which He made with you, and made for yourselves a carved image in the form of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. Now some say that believers don't need to worry about how we approach God because Yeshua's blood protects us. Look at Hebrews 10:19 through 22. Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which He consecrated for us through the veil, that is, His flesh, and having a high priest over the house of God. Let us draw near with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Yeshua is indeed our Korban, allowing us to draw near, but don't neglect the rest of the passage, that we must be consecrated. We must be set apart to God, and having a pure heart, which has been sprinkled to cleanse us from our evil conscience, and having a body washed that is consecrated with pure water. The writer of Hebrews goes on to remind believers that God is an all-consuming fire, and he urges us to serve with reverence and fear. Hebrews 12:28 and 29. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear, for our God is a consuming fire. In today's culture of informality and casualness, let us not forget that God has a higher standard. He demands and deserves that our service to Him be done with reverence and with respect, that we follow His instructions on how to approach Him and how to worship Him. He is a holy God, and He demands that we also be holy. As Peter writes in 1 Peter 1:16, he says, "Be holy, for I am holy." Thanks for watching today. I'm Dan Cathcart, and this has been Shadows of the Messiah. Shalom, and be blessed. Thank you for watching today's video presentation. Brenda and I invite you to visit our website at moedministries.com, where you will find some valuable free resources for you to share with your family and neighbors. On our teaching ministry page, you will find links to materials for use in small home group Bible studies, such as our 4-volume Shadows of the Messiah in the Torah series. Also available is Divine Appointments with God, an in-depth study of the feasts of the Lord. We have recorded free video sessions available on our website at the Feast Study tab to supplement the Leader's Guide and companion student workbooks available in our online bookstore. Both the Shadows of Messiah in the Torah and the Divine Appointments with God make great family, small group, or even individual Bible studies. Several of our other books and videos are also available in our bookstore, so please visit our website today at moedministries.com. That's Moed, M-O-E-D, Ministries, all one word, .com. And be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Again, thanks for watching today. Shalom, and be blessed.